I'd like to call this October 21st meeting of the Northfield Township Planning Commission to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please call the roll, Mr. Stanilecho.
Mr. Dignan.
Present.
Ms. Chick.
Here.
Ms. Chockley.
Here.
Mr. Iaquinto.
Present.
Mr. Roman.
Here.
Mr. Kuzno.
Here.
And I'm present, Stanilecho.
Thank you. We have a quorum. We have a couple members of the public, Ms. Lumble, our recording secretary, Mary Bird, our staff person, and our planner, Ms. Leah Dumichel, and Jim Nelson, our video and sound recorder. Thank you. You have the agenda before you. I have no changes to suggest at this time, so...
I do have a question.
Okay.
I'd like to see, I know I had made a previous motion in a previous meeting in regards to 12A.
12A?
That
Okay.
the survey, it be kind of off the table until such time that it was to be brought back by the secretary and chair together. And has that happened?
Well, I didn't discuss it with Mr. Stanilecho, but Ms. Chick wanted an update, and this is just an update. We're not doing anything with it. So if people don't want to hear what I have to say,
Okay.
that's fine with me. But I am prepared to say what I've been doing with it.
Okay.
Okay, so if you want it removed, I'm fine with that.
I just wanted a point of clarification on that. I just wasn't sure.
Okay.
I understand. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions about the agenda? Okay.
Make a motion to approve agenda as presented. Support.
Okay, a motion by Mr. Iaquinto, support by Mr. Dignan to approve the agenda as distributed. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No? Okay, thank you. We now have an opportunity for a call to the public, and we have a couple members of the public here. Would either of you like to come up and speak with us for 3 minutes? Please address your comments to me, the chair, and at 2.5 minutes I'll show you the yellow, and at 3 minutes I'll show you the red. You know how this goes. Please state your name and your address. Thank you. Welcome. That'd be fine, thank you. Oh, turn it on. Yeah. Yeah.
Just stop right where your finger is. There you go.
Thank you.
Nobody got my Noah, this is God joke last time. An old Bill Cosby thing? No?
Yes.
I'll leave it alone. My name's Craig Warburton. I live at 450 West Joy Road. It works real well. For any offense that was taken from my comments and my decorum at the last meeting, I apologize. I find it very, very difficult when meetings get so wildly out of control with no semblance of parliamentary order to not want to just chime in too. And I'll do my best to not do that anymore, or I'll leave. So, without rehashing some of the behavior, I would have to say that in the comments from the commissioners at the end of the meeting, there were some things that were said that I thought were just dead right on, just spot on with what's going on here. And there were comments I found wholly inappropriate. And I feel somewhat compelled, I love that word, to bring to light the things that I thought were wholly inappropriate. The woman, and I don't know her name, from the Huron River Watershed Council, spent a great deal of time preparing documents, and it's a scary thing to stand up here and talk to you guys for any length of time. 3 minutes is overwhelming to me. She did 30 or 40. And it was really good stuff. And then came the comment that it's all discounted because she serves in Ann Arbor Township, and that wasn't going to be tolerated. And the takeaway was that she was zero growth. And I don't think you have to be zero growth to be profoundly interested in preserving the environment. Someone in that closing comment said, there's something going on. And I heartily agree. The kid that ate the cookies is always the first one to say he didn't eat them. Tonight in your packet, there's a motion finally addressed to the Biltmore properties issue. I would suggest, it would be my suggestion to the chair that it be deemed out of order and discarded because it's flatly an invitation to one developer to come to this township and build and not be limited to the requirements of the master plan, if you read all the sentences. It does not address, by specific inclusion, the letter from May 30th, 2014. Grammatically, a motion must start with, I move, or we shall resolve. And I would suggest that that motion should really be worded, I move that Biltmore Properties be given the answer no to their request for amending the zoning map in the Township Master Plan formally submitted May 30th, 2014. The master plan includes various tools for density adjustment within the AR district should they wish to avail themselves of it, including clustering, open space preservation, and density bonuses. The township planner would probably be pleased to help them identify the requirements and limitations of the master plan, keeping in mind the envisioned desires expressed in the master plan and compliance with the current zoning. That was the whole 3 minutes? Well, I think that motion is wrong. It either has to address something that's in front of the Planning Commission, or you're making new issues and making new business. So, thank you very much.
Do we have anyone else who would like to speak tonight? Okay, seeing no one. Well, we can move on to correspondence. Did anyone receive anything from anyone? Other than, I did forward an email out that I received from Mr. Gordon, so you all have a copy of that communication that we received. But I have nothing else. Okay, then we'll move on to reports. Board of Trustees, Ms. Chick?
Board of Trustees met October 13th. They passed some action items relating to the Kiwanis and the Northfield Human Services request to use the second floor of the Public Safety Building. The board did approve an amount not to exceed $60,000 for boardroom construction, and Manager Fink is working very hard to keep the cost underneath that and possibly cut it less than the numbers that we were given. So. I'm not sure when that'll start, but we're still working on those, that information. And then also discuss the downtown planning group that he wants to, or actually the DDA and the township manager are trying to formulate for a visioning session for the downtown area. And he was looking for community interest and not necessarily people from the board. In fact, no people from the board, no people from the planning commission. He wants citizens to be involved in that. So he's looking for 15 people if anybody's interested. And then we took snow removal bids, so that's all I have.
Okay, great, thank you. Did the ZBA have a meeting, Mr. Dignan?
ZBA did not meet.
Okay, staff report. Ms. Bird, do you have anything? Okay. Planning consultant report. Mr. Michelle.
We did have a pre-application meeting this week with a developer interested in developing a property on Jomar Drive.
Could you
speak into
speak
the-
closer to the
Yeah,
mic?
we
I
can't
can't
hear you.
hear you.
Still not catching it? Sorry about
Yeah.
that. So, pre-application conference this week with a developer interested in a property on Jomar Drive. They are targeting being in front of this board by December.
Great.
Thank you.
What kind of business is that? Is it?
Designing and building exhaust systems.
Oh, okay. So are they looking at
Yep.
basically building a new building, or is that their plan, or are they planning on taking over something that's already existing?
It was construction. Yeah? I'm not 100% sure.
Okay.
Okay. Great. Okay, we have no public hearings. Our old business. Mr. Dignan had proposed a motion, and I'd like you to go ahead and speak to that, Mr. Dignan. It's all in your
Thank you.
packet.
As you all know, there was a question proposed to us by Biltmore Properties LLC when they came before this board and presented to them. And their question was what would you like to see? What could we build there? What what would a vision be? We've not answered that question, and there's been a lot of community response to that. With that, I'd like to make a motion that we advise Biltmore Properties LLC that the Northfield Township Planning Commission would welcome a formal proposal from the developer that utilizes the tools that currently exist in our ordinance and are available for AR zoning properties that they previously have identified. Those tools include, but are not limited to, our clustered development, our open space preservation, and the opportunity for density bonuses under certain design standards. The proposal shall recognize the desire for growth that is envisioned within the Northfield Township Master Plan and must comply with all current zoning ordinances.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Dignan and support by Mr. Iaquinto. Now we have discussion. Anyone like to talk about this proposal? Mr. Roman.
In speaking for myself, I don't feel it's the Planning Commission's duty or responsibility, or even remotely close to going out and soliciting developers to submit a plan. I just want to make that clear. That's the one issue that I have with this. I think it's more of an administration role. Could be the township supervisor, could be a building official, could be the township manager, could be the planning person. So I think this, us in doing this, doesn't leave the view that we're impartial or looking at all options. That's all I'd like to say.
Madam Chair, can I address that?
Yes, Mr. Dignan. Well, wait a minute. Maybe we should have everyone else say their pieces first.
I'd like to address that specifically, though.
Okay, go ahead.
This was not the intent of soliciting. We did not go out and actively pursue these folks. These folks came before us, and they proposed a question to us, a question that we have failed to answer month after month after month after month. They came before us with a very broad proposal that didn't give us any details. And they said, we're looking to develop here. What would you like to see? And in my motion, I'm simply saying, what we would like to see is something that complies with our zoning ordinance and meets the standards of our master plan. That's what we'd like to see there. That's it. I'm not asking, I think that anyone who said, boy, I'd like to come to your township and develop, we'll welcome any proposal to look at. It doesn't mean we're going to approve it. It doesn't mean they're going to move forward. They may decide not to do anything. They may decide to come forward with something. I don't know. But they asked us a question, and the Planning Commission, having them here, having them on our agenda, has not yet addressed that question, and now's the time. This is a lingering issue that's been before this commission for a long time. It has been a stifling issue in our community. It has divided this community again. And, right now, the laws are what they are. Our ordinances are what they are, and our master plan is what it is. We have an open amendment or update to our master plan that's going on right now. I expect that to be an 18-month to 2-year process. We modified our wishes to look at the entire master plan. We're not looking at segments anymore. We voted in this board to look at the entire master plan and start that review process. I'm not doing it for a developer. I'm not doing it for a specific piece of property. We all agreed that we shouldn't be. So, when a developer comes before us, everyone has a right to bring a proposal to this board. And we have a right, if it doesn't fit within the compliances of what our ordinances are and our master plan are, to tell them, no, do better.
Mr. Stanilecho.
I'm not sure if it's common knowledge, but about 10 years ago, a developer, I believe from Rochester, actually did on this exact same on the exact same parcels of property, actually went through a whole site plan with exactly the tools, the way that the zoning is, everything. And they actually had a really nice development that they brought before the Planning Commission back then. I don't think that it's out of the ordinary or shouldn't be something that we request if they are serious, that they need to work within the confines of the way that our master plan is currently, the way our zoning is currently. And since they did come before us, I don't see that it isn't something that we should ask them. If they're interested, let's let them pursue that. Let them know that we're willing to see what they have to offer if they're still serious. I think this proposal does that, so.
Ms. Chick.
If I can speak to the proposal that you were talking about, that happened about 10 years ago, it was actually denied because it didn't comply with our zoning at that time. So that's why it was very nice, right? But it did not comply, so it was denied. My concern with the motion is that they came to us asking for a reduction in density, basically in zoning. They want to move it down to an MDR. We have not addressed that at all. They haven't sent us anything. We haven't looked at anything. My only concern with this is that, so we're telling them, we might be interested if you present something to us that actually complies with our zoning. Is that a message that we want to send to them?
I think that's a message we want to send to anyone. If you want to come to Northfield Township, we have standards. If you're coming here, you have to meet those standards. That's why we have them. That's the message we're sending. If you want to come here, you gotta work within the confines of our ordinances and the confines of our master plan.
Anyone else down here? Mr. Kuzno.
I just have, it's been so long since this discussion's been out there. Do we have an official status? First of all, was it a formal application for a zoning or for a master plan amendment? Is that what they have is that what's out there right now? Is that?
It was a request from Biltmore for us to take a look at our master plan and amend it they didn't go for a rezoning. They went for a master plan
They did or did
amendment.
not?
It didn't go anywhere.
Right,
We've
so
been talking about it now.
Is there a formal application for to amend a master plan or not?
It was a letter request that we take a look at it, and we started to take a look at it, and then things have sort of petered out there. So we have part of the process of taking a look at it was launching into amending the master plan, which involved citizen survey, and we've stalled basically in that portion of it. So we haven't continued.
I guess my question is there a formal application for proposing amendments to our master plan, or is it just a letter throwing out there, hey, would you do this, please?
No.
So we don't have that. We don't have that as a tool in our toolbox, Stephen. Okay. So this was just a request. All right.
Right.
It was a conceptual plan. That's what they gave us.
Well, they didn't even give us that, did they? There was
Yeah.
no
Well,
geographics.
It was
There's no
just the
graphics.
properties outlined.
Yeah,
That's all it
right.
was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was, I believe, just the letter and the identification of the properties.
Okay, right.
Then they verbally made some requests and communications. When there was some resistance, they then said, well, tell us what you want there.
Right.
And I guess that's what my intent was in this motion is, what we want there is something that complies. That's, I mean, that's as straightforward as I could make it.
That
So.
was very straightforward, I agree. Mr. Iaquinto.
This motion, and that was part of my comment, is a very straightforward statement that if you are looking at developing,
please follow our ordinances as they are presently within the 2015 year calendar. And I'm in favor of this motion because it will go ahead and address this and let them know, either present something to us now or move on. Thank you.
I would like to say, and I would like to ask a question too, but I would like to say that June 11th of 2014, I had a meeting with Mr. Lewan. Well, I didn't call the meeting. Mr. Fink called the meeting with Mr. Lewan, Mr. Stolman, and Mr. Fink. And I told Mr. Stolman at the time that what our master plan was, and I told him what he could do within our ordinances, you know, as using the open space. This motion is really nothing that I didn't tell Mr. Stolman at the time, what our master plan was and what he could do with the property based on our ordinances and our, especially our open space ordinance and our density bonus. And there was not the interest in that low of a density, and so, you know, he was hoping that we would make some change to our master plan to allow him more density than that, and that's why it has taken this time. But he has received the message. He received the message from me and Doug Lewan back June 11th, 2014, what our master plan was, such as our expectations and what he could do. Now, Mr. Lewan, in the meantime, put together some charts that showed how many pieces, how many parcels he could get on all those different pieces of property, and then we had launched into this potential master plan amendment, which has stalled. So that was my only ever conversation with Mr. Stolman. I just wondered if any of the rest of you have ever had a conversation with Mr. Stolman, and if so, it would be nice to know what the content was. So, anyone ever call him up? No? No discussion with him at all? Ever?
The only discussion that I ever had with him was
He was out here.
here. I mean, that's it.
Okay.
But, you know, this whole process, I feel, was just kind of done in a very, it could have been done in a better fashion. You know, we went off and we asked a developer who didn't make a formal proposal to do all kinds of studies. We went into a master plan amendment to modify land for, in an area so narrow that it was clearly for them. It just, there wasn't a clear message from this board to the developer, and I think that's all they asked for, is a clear message. And with my motion, I'm trying to send a clear message that this is it, folks. I'm not telling them, please come here and develop. I'm saying, we'll welcome a formal proposal. But it's going to be, you know, a formal proposal. You know, someone comes here and gives you this. What are we supposed to do with this? What we do with this is say, thanks. You know, there's a process to go through with staff where you can submit a proposal before this board. And that is the proper procedure to go through, I believe. You know, our staff is versed. Our planner is becoming more versed every day in our master plan and our zoning ordinances. You know what? A developer ought to be able to sit down with staff and the planner. I'll include you in staff. So just staff, and know what's going to work and what's not going to work. And I guess we as a planning commission need to send a message to our staff. You know, what are we willing to look at? You know, if they have a conceptual plan that is close to a formal plan, are we willing to look at that? Or do we say no? No. Bring us something that's actionable, or don't bring it before us.
Ms. Chick.
So if we pass this motion and this goes off to Biltmore, they may or may not even respond to it. They don't have to. There's no consequences, no teeth. So if you want something from them, shouldn't part of the motion be, or do we even have the authority to say,
No.
either you respond to this and, or, walk?
I don't care if they respond.
Oh, right.
I don't. This is a message that we're sending.
Mr. Roman. I mean, yeah, Mr. Roman, sorry.
I agree with Ken, should have been done in a better fashion. The whole basis for my comments is that it's not our duties to do this, I don't feel. Why send them a letter to state the obvious? Of course, anybody that submits something has to be according to our ordinances and zoning. So I understand that you want to send a positive message to them, but I don't feel we're the ones that should be sending a positive message to them. If you want to back the whole thing up, really, before they came the first time, their plan should have been more definitive. This is not their first development by a long shot. This is not their first rodeo. I don't see what we gain by doing this, and actually I think it loses credibility in view of the public. That's my opinion. And Ken, I'm not disagreeing with you. I might wholeheartedly agree everything you said, but I don't think we're the ones that should be doing this. Thank you.
Mr. Stanley.
Well, in retrospect, it's quite easy to see that this motion should have been made back in June of 2014, rather than all the stuff that took place after that initial letter. Because that initial letter created a whole lot of things happening and caused a lot of chaos. And I said, this is all looking back at the Monday morning quarterback, but I think this motion should have been, or something along this line, should have been sent to them with this message a long time ago. So who's the body that's responsible for doing it? I think any of us that are in the positions to be responsible, they came before the township board, they came before the planning commission. So I would think it'd be either one of those responsibilities, but I support the motion.
They wanted more density than what our master plan allowed and what our zoning allowed, and that's why they were so desperate to have us take a look at something beyond that, and I know there was a lot of desire to have more homes in the township for a lot of good reasons, but that's why it ended up going in the direction it did, and it's unfortunate because it didn't match our master plan. Mr. Iaquinto.
We are all repeating the same statements. I'd like to call the question, please.
Okay. Okay, we have a motion to call the question. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
I don't understand the motion that Sam just made.
We're calling we're going to move. Mr. Iaquinto
Calling for a vote.
wants to end the discussion and move
Okay.
on to calling the question. So passing or not the motion. So this is not that we're passing the motion. We're just ending discussion now and moving on to discuss the motion. So if you don't feel like you've had an opportunity to ask your questions about the motion, you want to vote no on this call to call the question. Okay, so we have a motion to call the question. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, so now we have a motion on the floor to send this Biltmore, well, would you, a letter advising them. Do you want to use the same language as what you passed out?
I think she's got the language.
Okay.
Yeah, letter, whatever. I mean, the discussion's over. Never mind.
Discussion's over, okay. So we have a motion to send a letter advising Biltmore Land LLC, et cetera, et cetera. Would you like to read it, Ms. Lembo? Do you have it good enough that you can read it? Just want to make it very clear. This will be a roll call vote also.
The Northfield Township Planning Commission advises Biltmore LLC that it would welcome a formal proposal for development that utilizes the many tools within our zoning ordinances available for agricultural AR zoned properties previously identified. These tools include but are not limited to cluster development, open space preservation, and density bonuses. The proposal shall recognize the desire for growth that is envisioned within the Northfield Township Master Plan and must comply with all current zoning.
Okay. So we'll have a roll call vote on this motion.
Can I propose an amendment, or no? Is it too late?
You would like-
Question's been called.
This
Good
what?
question.
Yeah.
Can, I don't think we can amend it at this point.
Not once the question's been called.
Right. Okay. Sorry. So, if it doesn't fit with your thoughts, then vote no. We can discuss it again later, I suppose. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Stanley.
Dignan?
Yes.
Chick? Chockley?
No.
Stanley Joe, yes. Iaquinto?
Yes.
Roman?
No.
Kuzno?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, so we have a letter going out.
Now, for clarity,
Hmm?
letters are the responsibility of our secretary, is that correct?
Communications are.
I'm sorry?
Communications.
Communications are,
Communications are.
unless designated to staff.
Mhm.
I just didn't want this to fall in the loophole of who's doing it, so that's
Right.
why I'm clarifying this. Is that something that, Mary, you will generate then?
Generate-
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
So that's all I want to clarify, that somebody's going to do it.
Going to do it, yeah.
Thank you.
That's fine. Okay, now, any developer, I mean, really, we could have expanded this to anybody who wants to develop in the township, that they need to meet our master plan and our zoning ordinances. So really, to narrow it to Biltmore was my, concern. But anyway.
I'm simply
um,
addressing an
it's going
answer
out.
to
Issue
their
funds.
question
Correct.
that they asked us and we did not respond to.
Okay.
Minutes?
Madam Chair, can I say one
Yes.
more thing?
Go ahead.
I think it's important for our community to understand too that we, as a board, as it's been referred to by the public, have struggled at times to operate in a way that's been most advantageous to our to the public. Meaning, we could have represented ourselves and the folks that are out there a little better than we have at times. The importance of this, I think, is to add credibility to this board, that we are going to stand up and support the things that are out there. We're going through and reviewing things like our RTM district for the appropriate reasons and development. We, as we venture through a master plan review, I believe we'll be diligent and involve the community. But it's important that we say, these are the ordinances, they're important to us, they're important to our community, and that's why I felt I needed to bring this before us so that we could make that statement and stand behind that statement. And it's just something that I think there's been a fog that needed to clear between what are we doing and what the community wants us to do, and what are we going to do in the future and how are we going to do it. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. We have no new business. We're moving on to minutes. I just have I have a comment on the minutes. I know that they're supposed to be brief, but when I read the calls to the public and I can't tell what side of any issue our public is on from our minutes, that troubles me. And it doesn't have to be great detail, but reading a statement prepared regarding the presentation, it doesn't tell us anything. So I know there's a way to do this that's brief, but gives us a little more detail, and I guess in the future, I would recommend we do it a little better than that. Mr. Stanilecho.
See, that is the exact problem that we have, is that you're trying to include things in the minutes that are not supposed to be in there. These are supposed to be the working minutes of this board. The public has the right in order to come up and speak. But the minutes are supposed to detail the work that we do, not what is said. So by trying to figure out what somebody else said, when you paraphrase, it doesn't really actually give that speaker what they actually came up and said when you paraphrase. So either you put in everything, or you leave it short that they came up and made a comment. I'm not sure what you're trying to get at by trying to say that you can read back and see what somebody wanted to say. They can certainly watch it on TV because it's recorded. They can watch everything.
Okay. I guess it's something we'll take up when we deal with the minutes in our bylaws. But I have concerns about it, and because someone not attending the meeting is supposed to be able to tell what happened, at least have a gist of what happened.
But not what somebody else from the public said, what this board is, the actions of this board, and what we said to come to the conclusion in the actions that we took. That's what it's supposed to tell.
There is some difference of opinion here on the board, so I'm just making my concerns known again. I would like to make one change under reports, 7A. There's just some wording issue there. Chick summarized proceedings of the September 22nd board meeting. So there's on the an extra couple words there. Does anyone have any other changes on page 1? Okay, page 2.
I do. Under first column, under the motion, second motion, says Iaquinto said he would like to see comparisons to bylaws in other communities. That isn't correct. I stated I am not interested in seeing comparisons in bylaws from other communities. So it was just the opposite.
Okay. So Iaquinto said he would not like to see comparisons to bylaws in other communities.
That's correct.
Okay. I had a question about that too, because I thought you said that. Any other changes to this page? Okay. Mr. Michelle.
At the top of the column where it says she noted that bylaws are not required, they are required, but they're also intended to indicate how the commission agrees to operate.
She knows that bylaws are.
Where is that, please?
At the top of the column, second line down.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Did you get that, Ms. Lumble?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I believe that's all the changes. Okay, can I have a motion to adopt?
Make a motion to adopt the agenda, or adopt the minutes from October 7th as amended.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Dignan and support by Ms. Chick to adopt the minutes as amended and dispense with the reading. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, thank you. Okay, next item. Policy review. Okay. So I know there are, some members of the board that want to know what's going on with the citizen survey, and I just would like to let you all know where I'm at with it. I did read the contract from Cobalt again. The contract is for a 12-month period of time, so it's not ending anytime soon. And part of the contract was that they get paid half of what the bid was, and that has been paid to them. So they have received $8,000. Don't believe the contract is cancelable easily anyway. So they are probably going to retain the $8,000 if we should even cancel the survey. Just wanted to let you all know that. So we do have 12 months to complete the survey, and that will be next June. So we have plenty of time to do this. In the meantime, we've been having some hard times coming up with questions. So I have gone out to groups and some individuals. I'm listening to what people are telling me, reading the letters I get, and because this subject of development has been controversial for some time. I'm wondering if just those kind of questions are really the answer to our problems. So I'm trying to figure out, what are our problems? Is it just lack of residential development, or any kind of development, or whatever? So when we do the survey, what questions will get us the answers that we need to move forward to appropriate solutions? So I did attend the Parks and Rec meeting September 17th, and they were generally not in favor of the expenditure for the survey. However, they would be interested in submitting a couple questions if the survey were to continue.
I was at that meeting. I don't remember.
meeting?
Yeah,
You left
that was
early.
not, I was there the entire time. That was not the sentiment from the Parks and Rec that the survey shouldn't be done. The statement was by a number one of us, or by many of us, that it should be very simplistic, one or two
Okay.
questions. That's the statement that we made at the Parks and Rec committee meeting.
Okay,
Not
that
that it
was
should
not
not
my
be done,
recollection.
but it should be very simplistic.
Okay, then I will change my recollection then. Okay, but they were completing their Parks and Rec master plan, and they had 40 people respond to their survey. And we have the opportunity through this survey to get a lot more input. So they would be interested, if it goes forward, in submitting a couple questions, if there's room on the survey. So I will remove the not then. The Downtown Development Authority meeting, I attended on September 24th, and the downtown has been experiencing significant problems in that most of the storefronts are now empty, and it has declined significantly. Potential causes that I offered to the group, which they shook their heads and said, oh yeah, were poorly run businesses, loss of customer base, loss of key businesses, loss of population, more and better shopping opportunities elsewhere, insufficient promotion of the area, and the lack of a main attraction. And these were generally accepted as true. So I asked them, what do you think it'll take to bring it back? And, or what reincarnation of the downtown do you think would make it more viable or a thriving area? And they haven't really given me any that kind of feedback yet, but we did discuss the following concepts: that development should be along the highway corridor. Mr. Lefebvre mentioned that specifically. Businesses related to the lake are the most likely to prosper. Income and rooftops are the biggest determinant for larger retailers to site in Whitmore Lake, and the same is true for Northfield Township as a whole. Parking in the downtown area is a big concern, apparently, and primarily there's a concern that if the 75 Barker Road were sold, that there may not be any parking downtown, and that was quite a concern for them. Another issue was the 100-year storm drainage requirements of parking. So those were their main issues, and I did invite them to share any additional thoughts with me, and I haven't received anything since that meeting. So thinking of that meeting, questions that I came up with was, for the survey, was how often...
Madam Chair?
Yes?
May I ask a question?
Yes?
I appreciate the work that you've done.
I'm almost done.
I just have, this board made a motion to not pursue any actions on the survey
And it was very clear.
into the future, to not do anything. I don't understand why all these things were done when this board made a decision to postpone indefinitely the survey until such time we were going to take it up again.
Okay.
We said we're done with it until the future. And all this stuff's been going on about it. This board doesn't have the credibility to do a survey in this community right now. At all. We do not have any credibility to do such a survey. I believe that we need to regain credibility with this community. We need to go through a methodical process of addressing things, bring our priorities back to the table, bring our new planner up to date on that, before we think that we can do a survey that's going to be even remotely accepted by the community. Can't do it.
Thank you, Mr. Dignan. Appreciate your opinion.
Well, the part of it's not my opinion. It's a fact. We did vote to not do anything more on the survey. Why are you continuing to do stuff on the survey?
I'm not we. I'm me.
Yeah, but
Thank
this
you.
board made a decision to not do the survey.
That's fine, Mr. Dignan. That's true.
So why are you continuing to push this agenda?
I'm giving you an update of the meetings that I have had. Ms. Chick, do you have something you'd like to share?
And to make a correction, we didn't vote not to do a survey.
Right.
The motion was to put it off. My understanding of the motion was to put it off until we had time to review things. The reason I asked for it to be on this agenda was because we've paid Cobalt $8,000. This is not our money. This is the taxpayers' money. We have a contract with them for almost $17,000. I really think we're not fair to our residents to be sitting on this and just and not having them do anything. There's absolutely no reason to hold this off for 12 months and then scramble at the end of 12 months to do the survey. I don't agree with the comment that we don't have any credibility. They've done surveys in 1996. I'm not talking about the planning commissioners shouldn't be doing it. But Cobalt should be doing something. They did a survey in 1996. We did a third survey in 2010. Both of them are credible surveys. There's no reason why Cobalt can't do the survey and do something we've paid them to do. So that's why I asked. I'm not asking us to do the survey. I'm asking us for updates. What's going on? It bothers me that the board has approved this money, and they want to see something happen, too.
I agree, Ms. Chick.
Madam Chair?
Okay, Mr. Dignan.
The motion was clear to table this item until such time that the secretary and the chair felt that it should be brought back to this board. That was the motion that was passed by this board. We also said that going forward, we wanted to follow the process that Cobalt has to do a survey. You're doing the opposite of that right now.
I'm not, Mr.
You
Dignan.
have.
I'm
You've been
not.
going to these community groups to come up with questions. That's not what we said we were going to do. That is not. And I don't understand why you continue to do this.
Mr. Dignan, it was set to be, they need a single point of contact, and I'm attempting to bring some information from some groups to provide them some information. Now, I believe, if you would listen to the rest of my report, that I will have a proposal toward the end so that we can actually move forward on this. But if you would all like to cancel the rest of my update, I will happily just continue with what I'm doing.
No,
You just
continue
won't-
your update, that's fine.
Okay, thank you. So the question is, the citizen survey opportunities that I see are how often do you frequent the businesses in downtown Whitmore Lake, if indeed that is the big driver that we need to get residential in here. So how often do you frequent the businesses? How often do you frequent the businesses in the North Territorial US 23 area? Where do you go for your weekly shopping needs? What businesses, services, or recreational opportunities would make you want to visit the downtown area? And those were the kind of things that I got out of the DDA meeting. I did meet with the Northfield neighbors on September 29th, and their thought was that the master plan was a valid document and there is room for everyone built into it. We shouldn't be rushing to change it. A recommendation was made to convene a focus group that is composed of all the voices in the township, and that might bring about a common vision to move forward. And my thought was that Ms. Dumichel might be a good person to actually convene those voices to kind of get some information. Now, I don't know if the rest of this board is interested in that, but I thought she would do a fine job at that. I'm scheduled to meet with Whitmore Lake Schools next week, the Kiwanis Club November 5th, and then in the Northfield Township Seniors in November. And I would encourage the rest of my fellow commissioners to weigh in on what you think you would want to know in the survey and provide that kind of information to me so I can compile this. So that's my main report on the update, and I'm open to comments. Mr. Stanilecho.
Can I ask, are you doing this as a private citizen, or are you doing this as chairperson of the Planning Commission?
I'm doing this, both, actually.
Thing is that I don't remember us even allowing you or basically recommending that you go and do this. So you're representing us, but we haven't given you any direction to do this. So I have a real issue with you actually going out representing the Planning Commission at these meetings when in fact it's never even been put forward as a motion to have you do that.
I'm asking questions of the public, and I don't think that is a bad thing to do, even if I just say I'm a private citizen. And I'm gathering information to provide one voice to Cobalt so that we can move forward.
A voice for who?
A single voice. I'm compiling the information. It's not like you're not going to see it.
I have no problem with you doing this if you want to go out and do it on your own.
Okay.
All right, I really don't.
I don't
You can do
charge
whatever you
the
want to.
township at all.
It's not about charging the township. It's the representation that is implied by you going out saying you're the chairperson of the Planning Commission. Because I haven't been polled on it. I'm sure anybody else here hasn't been polled
Right.
on it either. Whether or not that was something that we wanted to have happen. I mean, we have these meetings. They are more than welcome to come and express their opinions. I would say that if they wanted to express their opinions, let's send them a letter from the Planning Commission, telling them, they're welcome to come here and talk about this stuff. I have no problems with that. But you're seeking out something, and I think it's the misrepresentation. That's the problem that I have with that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stanilecho. Anyone else would like to comment on that? Mr. Kuzno.
I applaud your efforts for seeking information here and bringing it to us. It's helpful information. For me, I'm not quite clear on what was expected to happen after the resolution that was placed out there to do nothing with this thing. Was it just supposed to be left in Cobalt's hands and let them come back to us? Were we doing nothing on our part? Were we just like letting this thing expire in 6 more months? What was the thinking there? I don't understand. And how was the secretary and the chairperson supposed to get together, and what were they supposed to be doing anyway? I mean, I don't get a lot of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, we haven't, every time we have some questions, we don't have any helpful suggestions, which has been the big problem, in my opinion. So then I'm attempting to do what I can to kind of get to the bottom of it. And it's not like you won't all be included. And I'm hoping that we have this focus group that we can bring together people so that we can find some common ground and some healing in this community instead of the polarization that we have had going on. And I'm doing my very best, and it's very difficult to come here, and I've been completely open and transparent. It's just very difficult to come here and get shot down every time. And I'm going to continue on because I feel like I'm doing the right thing for the community. And that's all I can say about that. Ms. Chick.
Cobalt has asked for direction from the board, from the Planning Commission, from the residents, and as of now, they've gotten very little, very little, almost nothing. And actually, the only person doing any legwork right now is Marlene. And as a resident, if she wants to do that, I have no problem with that. I've sent them some things, but they're not hearing from anybody else. So what are they supposed to do? And I don't agree that we should just be sitting on this. As a trustee, I'm responsible for the fiscal health of this township, as every other trustee is, and so they want to know what's going on. We've paid them money. We need to be doing something.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Mr. Dignan.
I disagree with Trustee Chick. Chairperson Chockley, we did have a discussion. I want to address Commissioner Kuzno's question as well. We voted specifically to postpone indefinitely. Then we said, as a board, collectively, that the secretary and the chair need to work with the survey company
No, that was
to,
not the
yes,
motion.
hang on, in discussion, to follow their process. Their process. Not our process, not your process, their process. That was what we talked about, following their process. The step then was, we did give them direction. We said, we're going to follow your process. And then we never did. We didn't get with them to do that. And truly, with the questions that have been presented over the course of this time, that's where it speaks to the credibility question of what is the purpose of this survey? What do you want to get out of this survey? Have we had a thorough enough discussion to really know that if we were to each go into a room and write down what we wanted out of this survey and come out, would it match? Do we have a consensus on our board of what we want out of this survey? I don't think we do. I do not think we do that. And because of that, it concerns me.
We had objectives that were presented by Cobalt, and everyone said these were fine. Okay, now I would like to encourage, I don't want to keep going on this topic all night here. We're not deciding anything. I would just like you all to actually participate in providing some questions that you want to know the answers to me. Now, if you don't want to, I haven't gotten anything from anybody, except Ms. Chick has provided a lot of good information. I would appreciate getting some information from you all. Mr. Stanilecho.
Well, I know that during that discussion, I did ask specifically, so what are we going to do with this? And I believe, Janet, you ended up saying that we're starting the thing all over again, and we're going to follow what Cobalt wants us to do. And I don't know that it's right for us to continue on this, because I haven't heard from Cobalt. I don't know what their process is. I haven't heard anything else from them from that discussion that we had. So if we were resetting the timetable on this or restarting from scratch all over again, and we're going to follow what they suggest, I haven't seen those suggestions.
Why don't we do that now? Make a motion to give Cobalt direction to get started on the survey.
Okay. We received a memo from Cobalt, which is their 5-step process for developing of an assessment. You all received a copy of this. This was the one where I sent it out after you said, why didn't I get it when the board got it for their meeting? So you all have all received this township survey approach. So
what's
we
the
can
date of
move in
that?
It's 9/21/15. And the Board of Trustees got it before the Planning Commission did.
And state the topic of that letter.
It says RE Township Survey Approach. And if you want, I can read it, but you should all have it in your
No, it's fine.
packet, have had it in your packet.
So again, all right, they sent that. Where's their representatives contacting us saying, here's what we need to do? I don't see that. I haven't gotten contacted. I don't think anybody on this commission has gotten contacted about this. So where's the next step going? I think that's the question.
Okay,
Not just to get a bunch of questions that we can submit, because again, we're going through our own process to do this rather than following their process.
I think they probably got the message that the Planning Commission said to postpone it, so they've been sitting waiting for us to tell them, move
Right.
on it.
And that's
So
what
I
I
think
t-
we need to do that.
Well,
That's
then-
what I told
Yeah.
them, is that we had tabled it indefinitely. And so anyway, if you go back and read this, I will have Cobalt begin developing the survey again. But I'm still going to be meeting with the groups, because that is something that they find very valuable. So, Mr. Dignan.
Are you meeting with those groups as an individual, or are you meeting as the chair of the Planning Commission?
I will meet as an individual if that is your preference.
No, if you're meeting as the chair of the Planning Commission, you know, we're 7 equal commissioners with the 7 equal, I mean, not one of us has any different than the other. If you're going to go and be a representative, I believe you need to ask the other commissioners when you do these things if they'd like to go as well. And we have to be conscious of quorum. But if you're going to be there, I think that it's only proper that the other commissioners have an opportunity to be there as well, to ensure that the data that we're getting is is completely in line with what's being said. I just, so, I think it's important, just as if I was a planning commissioner, was going to be meeting with a group in the community as a planning commissioner, I would not do that without consulting this board first, because I'm one of 7 members that has no authority. Once I leave this room, none of us have any authority at all. We're private citizens. We are not representatives of the Planning Commission in any fashion whatsoever. So if we go out into the community representing the Planning Commission, this board should know about it and sanction it. And if this board doesn't sanction it, we shouldn't be out there saying that that's what we're doing. And that goes for all of us.
Okay. Do we have, did you want to make a motion or something, Ms. Chick, about something? I don't know. Am I supposed to be discussing with Cobalt now for them to move ahead? Oh, Mr. Roman.
I have a suggestion.
Yes, please.
And I'm not going to go back and beat the horse some more. I suggest that yourself and Mr. Stanalacho compose a letter to Cobalt, mutually agreeable, for them to initiate their process for the survey, and just forward copy to all the commissioners upon its completion.
Make that motion.
A letter?
Does it have to be a motion? I mean,
No, it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, no.
okay. I'm all right with it. I
Okay.
trust that both of you will
Okay.
do it, and I'll see a copy, so.
Okay, so,
Before it goes out.
sure.
It's pretty simple. The
Yeah.
point of the letter
Okay.
that we'd like them to initiate their process, so.
Okay. Okay. We can do that. All right, next item on the agenda, RTM zoning designation. I'll let Ms. DuMichel handle this item.
Okay, so when I was asked to take a look at the RTM zoning review, the 2 issues that I was made aware of are the limitation of manufacturing as an accessory use, limiting that to just 25% of the total floor area, and the appropriateness of the level of restriction encoded in the district's performance standards. So I did take a look at both of those, took a look at some other communities, took a look at some guiding documents. The short answer to the removal of the 25% floor area is that I think it would be fine. Simply removing that limitation and doing so by striking out the wording in 36.637 2B, right? So where it said under permitted accessory uses, item B, where it says prototype or pilot processing, manufacturing, and or assembling if strictly incidental and subordinate to an activity permitted and located in the RTM district. And then it goes on to say, and if such use does not occupy more than 25% of the total floor area. I think if we just struck that last sentence, it would make a negligible difference, especially considering that the next section discusses other uses, which are not even industrial uses, and does not limit them so strictly. It merely says that they are located and intended to support and complement the permitted principal uses. So to that very narrow question, that's my recommendation. In looking at the appropriateness of the level of restriction in the performance standards, I bumped up against an idea that was also present more broadly in looking at the 25% limitation, which is the number one item under the purpose for the RTM district is to provide an environment of related activities which will encourage an increase in the productivity of business and industry. So if the point is to get those businesses together, then I think removing the performance standards, well, let me back up one second. Performance standards are the thing that separate a RTM district from a general industrial district. So the general industrial districts are recognized that activities happen there that nobody really wants to live next to. And so that's why they have the big transition strips or the buffers or are located away from other uses. So that's true in general industrial. The transition strip is smaller in light industrial, and it doesn't exist in RTM because we have put some additional restrictions on what can happen there, or actually on the effects of what can happen there. So I think that loosening those standards doesn't accomplish what you want to do in the RTM district, but if we're finding the standards too restrictive, I did notice that of the maybe only half a dozen communities that I looked at, in most cases, the RTM district was not the largest of the 3 industrial classifications, as it is here in Northfield Township. So if we're bumping up against that being too restrictive, I think there would not be anything wrong with giving a little more space for converting some of the space to light industrial, particularly the space that is not currently next to the planned shopping district or any other planned uses. But that might be more generally a good consideration for the future of the master plan update and not pressing right now. Questions?
Mr. Roman.
In reading it, well, I have 2 things. In reading it, I think the intent of it was that uses or accessory uses in the RTM district would not be identical to those in light industrial and general industrial areas. If we lift the percentage allowable of the total floor area, basically it doesn't matter that it's RTM. It can do it with what's listed as accessory uses. It can be whatever it wants to be, and I think that is not the intent of the RTM district. My other problem is if you look at the map, we have residential or AR areas that are butt up right adjacent to our general industrial and the light industrial. Definitely the RTM needs to be looked at because where it's situated on our map as it is doesn't do exactly what you just described as providing a buffer between completely different uses of property. So I guess if there was a situation to relieve this, possibly look at increasing the percentage, like up to 50%. But I think definitely the percentage is in there to limit what can be done on the premises. So
Sorry, can I respond to that?
Sure.
I agree with that, and I think that the 50, specifically a 49% limitation, is achieved by the strictly incidental and subordinate to clause. So that is why I thought if what we needed was more flexibility, then removing just the 25% would offer that.
So are you saying there's language somewhere else that covers it up to 49%?
No, I'm saying that as I'm reading in 2B, where it says
Right.
prototype or pilot processing is permitted if strictly incidental and subordinate to. So when I interpret that, I think, well, it can't possibly do more than 50% if it's strictly incidental and subordinate to. But if what we need is flexibility, then that should keep it under that threshold. Or we
Now,
can change to 50.
Are you of the opinion that you're looking at different parcels and different buildings being compatible? Is that what you're looking at? Or are you looking at each specific parcel and the building and what's being done on it?
I'm looking at compatibility between districts. So, like, not even on the parcel level, but
So
like,
on a wide scale?
right.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions about this? I don't know how I feel about just eliminating it, wholesale. Because I wouldn't have caught, I know you would have, about the strictly incidental and subordinate being less than 50%. I wouldn't have known that. So a number would have been helpful to me. So Mr. Dignan.
Actually, Mr. Roman had his hand up
Oh,
first.
Mr. Roman again?
Yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I look at it as an example. If you took a property and a building in that area, and they make widgets, 1% or 2% of that total floor area could be the office of it, and it could be 98, 99% a manufacturing facility. I don't think that's what was intended. If we lift that 25% language out of there, that's possibly what could happen. So I agree, maybe loosening 25%, but what percentage, I don't know. And my other question is there a specific, is there something that came up? Is there
Yes.
somebody looking to do something that we're not aware of that we're looking at this?
There was someone was interested in the property and they couldn't make the 25%.
I mean, I would like to hear some background on the situation.
And I don't
Thank
know
you.
who, but Mr. Fink would know about that.
So there is somebody, thank you, and thank you, Leah, for the question. So you know, I support Leah's recommendation to eliminate the removal of the 25% floor area, and as a compromise, I certainly could live with the 50%, sort of 49% threshold. At the end of the day, this is, you know, an area of economic development I have a great deal of experience in. So the vast majority today, let's just take a step back for a moment, if I may. The vast majority of light industrial, what is considered light industrial, you go to any community in America and some people call it light industrial, some people call it research, technology, and manufacturing, some people call it industrial. The vast majority of new light industrial construction today is very different than what it was 20 or 30 years ago. It's very rare, Commissioner Roman, to find a company that's going to manufacture widgets and 90% of the property is going to be a sort of heavy manufacturing environment. Typically what occurs today is not manufacturing in a light industrial district, but assembly. And so usually when a large developer comes in and looks at a industrial, what we call light industrial today, and what we call light industrial today is not smokestacks, it's not heavy industry, it's not significant noise and significant pollution. Typically what we're looking at is a large, usually either tilt-up concrete or metal constructed building with a nice face and office in the front. And that could be a BTI, that could be a Morelli, which is in our community, that could be a Balanced Technologies, that could be an EDSS. The problem that you get into when you start saying what the percentage of manufacturing is that's going to change every single time a new use comes in. And so, for example, where I came from in Indiana, there was a building that was constructed for the manufacture of HVAC equipment. You drove by, you had no idea that they were manufacturing HVAC equipment in that building. And in fact, Purdue University...
I don't know what that is. What kind of equipment?
HVAC.
HVAC. Okay,
Yeah.
I couldn't understand you, sorry.
yeah.
HVAC, okay, I got it.
When you drove by, you didn't know it. And in fact, Purdue University had an extension in an office in that building. You walked into the Purdue section of the building, it looked like an office building. You walked into the Profab sheet metal part of the building, and they were constructing HVAC equipment. And typically when you build these new industrial buildings, they're built in sort of a way that becomes very flexible in their use. From a zoning perspective, I think it has less to do with the percentage of manufacturing and more to do if we're trying to, and I think what Larry's getting at, which I agree with, which we're trying to make sure that we maintain a sort of high-end kind of manufacturing industrial research complex so that it's a better buffer. I think it has more to do with the design guidelines and more to do with the quality of the construction and how the construction integrates into the community than it does about the percentage of manufacturing. Because in today's environment, it's really difficult to even get a heavy industry permitted. For example, if Raytech were to come in and move in today, the regulations that they would have to go through to get that type of a plant permitted would be pretty darn significant. And the local zoning regulations would be probably not the highest level of regulation that they would have to go through. Their regulation through DNR, through environmental air quality, those type of things would be significantly greater than what we would have. So my suggestion would be, for today's purposes, I do agree that the 25% should probably be eliminated. But when you look at the master plan, maybe look at the design guidelines of what do properties in that area look and feel like, as opposed to regulating the use, which is kind of moving more towards a form-based model, which I certainly subscribe to. So the reason why this became an issue is because obviously a company came in. They are a R&D facility. The vast majority of their building is going to be office space, but they are going to have some pilot manufacturing activities that are going to occur. So they're going to put in an engine, and they're going to be doing testing and so on and so forth. And they want to potentially expand their R&D facilities. They're a company in the automotive industry, and they want to expand their R&D facilities. To expand their R&D facilities would be pilot manufacturing. Manufacturing itself wouldn't occur in the building, but it would be a sort of pilot manufacturing. They'd be testing if the manufacturing process works, and then they would scale it up somewhere else. And they wouldn't necessarily be able to meet that 25% threshold. We also got a call many months ago, which didn't turn into a deal, but we got a call about somebody looking at a building that is for sale, an existing building that is for sale in the RTM district, which is if you drive by, is the Morelli? Morley, thank you. So if you drive by the Morley building, that building, if you look at it from behind it, that is a metal constructed manufacturing assembly facility. I'd say 80% of that building is open manufacturing space. That is existingly in the RTM district. So if a company wants to move in there, they, under our regulations, they can't even use the building in its current iteration. And so this issue of this 25% doesn't seem to fit with what it is I think you're really after.
Mr. Roman.
I'm sorry to say I disagree with most of what you said.
Okay, that's okay. Hey, that's good.
It is good. I happen to live very close to the whole area, so I know exactly where we're talking and what's there and what could possibly be there. And that's not the only reason that I bring up the opposite points. But we cannot adjust our ordinance, which is going to be long-standing for industry trends and how they look or operate. I think that's giving away the farm, so to say. If once you just put manufacturing in there without a limit of percentage, it can be anything it wants to be, as I said earlier. It could be a stamping plant. It could be a coal-fired tower. Could be a lot of things. We can't sit and judge individually or just, be a blanket job about what kind of industries are going to be in there. You have to consider the worst scenario as far as the resident living next to it or
Agreed.
Other people living next to it and businesses adjacent to it.
So the only thing I would say to 100% agree, but there's one point that I just want to throw out there, Commissioner Roman, that is kind of getting lost in here. We don't have a heavy industry district. A stamping plant is considered heavy industry.
We have general industrial.
Right, but it's But you look at the uses are specified. And so if what you're asking, which is absolutely correct, and many communities don't have heavy industrial uses allowed in their communities. Whether that's legal or not is a different story, but that's the reality of what many communities do. You look at the uses under each of those districts. We don't have a district for a stamping plant. We don't have a district for a heavy manufacturing. It isn't allowed in our zoning ordinance. It's not allowed by right. So I think that under the use guidelines of these various districts, you're gonna be able to regulate that.
I don't think manufacturing is separated in our definitions.
It is. If you look at the 3 different industrial districts, there are different.
There's districts and there's manufacturing, but you're saying manufacturing, once you give them the opportunity to occupy the whole building, that's what they may do.
Stamping, I've permitted a stamping plant before.
I threw it out there as an example.
Sure, I understand.
Okay. Mr. Dignan.
I do have a question, because I'm starting to think about this and, prototyping. And I guess that's where it comes to mind. Working in the automotive sector, as I have over the years, specifically on the technology side of things, very high-tech industry. And my question to the commissioners is this, if you have a company that is in the automotive industry that builds a 5,000 square foot building, let's say, or maybe we can go bigger, 10,000 square foot building, and 2,500 square feet of that is office space because the rest of it is multiple wind tunnels to test wind drag, things of that sort. And they're bringing multiple vehicles in. They're developing, let's say they're a mirror developer. So they're developing mirrors for multiple car makers. They're trying to design the mirror so it has a better coefficient on how it responds to wind, less drag, improves fuel economy, that kind of thing. I don't have an issue with that in RTM. I think that is a great use in RTM. But you're talking about a 10,000 square foot building where 7,500 square feet of it is being used by multiple wind tunnels and vehicles. So is there an issue with that in the RTM district? They couldn't go there today. As a matter of fact, they couldn't even go in there because the building wouldn't be big enough for a modern day vehicle sized wind tunnel.
But isn't that testing and
Prototyping.
right, but that's already allowed. That's not part
It's
of the
not allowed.
25%.
But it's not allowed because 75% of the building would not be research. I mean,
Well,
would
but
it be research?
It's a testing
No, it
laboratory.
wouldn't be. Yeah, so.
A wind tunnel is a prototype?
Well, the wind tunnel is necessary in order to prototype the product that they're doing in the manufacturing process of that product.
But
So,
I would consider that a testing laboratory, and that's permitted up at the top with no square footage associated with it.
yeah,
I guess,
I don't understand what the 25% is if we're so restrictive on what we allow in that district to begin with. A higher percentage makes sense to me. If that area needs to be a secondary use, I certainly can see that secondary use. But to be honest, things are really high tech these days. If you're in the testing space or prototyping space, 75% of your employees may not even be there. You know, they could be anywhere in the world, and you got this small little office and a big testing facility because, by golly, whatever you're prototyping needs a lot of space. There's a lot of things out there that could require that.
but Mr. Roman's concerned about blowing this wide open and somebody coming in who is not exactly our idea of a wonderful, business that might be noisy or it might be who knows, smelly or what, right? Is that allowed, Mr. Michelle?
Well, in this district specifically, that's what I was talking about the performance standards. So because this district is designed to be a little closer in, it doesn't require all that elbow room. And so Section 11 forbids atmospheric emissions, electromagnetic radiation, radioactive and chemical materials, no vibration, noise emanating from a building has a specific decibel limit, adequate safety for storage and activities, protecting the surrounding properties from glare, no discharge of any liquid or solid materials, and odors from any use shall not be discernible at the lot line. So in a
That's
way,
pretty
that
restrictive.
part is attempted to be dealt with.
Okay. Mr. Stanilecho.
I know that Mr. Roman's concern is that there's a word in there that is defined in our ordinance book as manufacturing. And it says that it's the process of making products by hand, by machinery, or other agency, often with the provisions of labor and the use of machinery. So that is a very broad definition of what manufacturing ends up being. So I see Mr. Roman's point in that if you basically eliminate this and you leave in that broad definition, it is definitely open to interpretation, and it's really hard to go in and say, gee, that's not what we meant after the fact. So, I think the way it currently reads right now is, as Mr. Roman said, it basically, if you eliminate the percentage, anybody can go in and put in a proposal to put in any type of manufacturing they want to, and would probably have a good case because our way our definitions read.
Mr. Roman.
Having dealt and been in enforcement and ordinances, I can tell you the performance standards, all of them except maybe D, that might be covered by the fire department, are pretty much unenforceable. I mean, it's great to have them in there. Realistically, you're never going to send anybody out to enforce it. If you could, it'd take large amounts of test equipment, time, and material. So,
Mr. Roman is 100% correct.
yeah, I'm trying to, I'm trying to offer out some kind of, in the middle of the road somehow. But I think that this whole section needs to be looked at again, to be honest, and possibly we can look at what you would like to see as buildings go there instead of all what you can do.
Like more form-based.
And that's like Mr. Fink kind of suggested. So that might be an option, but we're not going to do that tonight. But
Right.
I just don't want to see the percentage of floor space totally eliminated.
Okay. So maybe we look at a form-based version of this? Is that what I'm hearing? Maybe we look at a form-based version that still maintains?
I don't know if you can do that, but I mean, in going wide open, you lose a lot of the appearances that you want to maintain for that type of area.
Yeah,
So I'm not
I
sure
agree.
that's the way to go.
I
But-
think, sorry.
Go ahead,
If
Mr.
I may.
Sure.
I think what Mr. Roman is saying is that he wants a percentage to stay in there. And I think at this moment that's probably appropriate. I think the question is what is that percentage? And I think that Mr. Roman is right. There are pros and cons to form-based type of development ordinances, and he is correct in that it's very difficult to enforce after the fact. And so I think you should hear that concern as as somebody who lives out there who's saying let's not open it wide open. So I think some percentage and would be appropriate. I'm not sure what that number is, but
I agree.
Are you done, Mr. Dignan?
Yeah, I think in reading the sentence prior to the proposed strike language, with it saying subordinate to, I don't think that number should be above 49%. I mean, and 49% seems reasonable to me. I mean, I think, you have a lot more experience with this, Mr. Roman, and you do the enforcement of stuff. I mean,
It all depends on the business itself, but what I don't also want to start a trend is to adjust our ordinance for a potential property buyer. I don't think
Absolutely.
that's fair. We still have to look at the end result, the long haul down the road. If a person did come and they were interested in property and perhaps they had more manufacturing than this would allow, we do have property that's for sale in the proper zoned light industrial district or general industrial, I'm sure. But I just don't want to get into the same scenario as we may have had already. So, and it's nobody's fault. I mean, Mr. Fink is doing, that's exactly his job, is to find business, bring business in for the betterment of the township. So I don't fault him at all for that. And it has to be done, and somebody's got to do it. But do we want to adjust a long-standing ordinance item for one purchase? Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Stanley?
I think that there's actually a mechanism right now for them to adjust it on an individual basis, and it's going through the ZBA and asking for a variance of that.
No.
yeah, they could, absolutely. There's no question at all. They could absolutely come before the ZBA and ask for a variance of that. Well, we have not had something like that. That would definitely present a challenging case to be presented. I do have to say that. One of the things that I think we have to recognize is, when was the last time we had to look at this language for a development? BTI?
We haven't looked at it. We just.
I know.
Yeah, right.
When you look at something, when you're asked to look at something, is also when you look at it, and that's when you find out what sometimes may not be current or may not fit anymore. If you don't ever have any development going on, you don't know how it works. Still not a reason to just open things up and change them all the time, but that is something to keep in mind, is does this not fit because things have changed in industry? And I know that there was a comment about not making changes just because industry changes, but this specific thing I see getting smaller and smaller and smaller in the needs to have the research space. And the smaller that research space becomes, the area of prototype development and growth is going to be bigger. It's just going to be. I mean, depending on what they're producing. So, I'd be comfortable if someone wanted to do something like a 49%, but that's just my thoughts.
Ms. Dumichel, are you aware of what other communities do with RTM districts? Are we unusually small as far as the percentage?
I didn't see any other numbers off the top of my head. Most of the wording was similar to, all of them had restrictive wording in it. All of them that I looked at had performance standards in it, but at no other time did I see a specific floor area. And again, it was not a comprehensive review. It was just a spot check. I can look more closely.
Okay. Well, I guess we're not really, there's other parts of this too that need a little bit of correction too. So maybe we can, you can bring us back something. I'm thinking, I'm personally thinking in the 35 to 49% range. I don't know. I would like to see if there's any other examples in other communities. And maybe we could clean up some of these other things too,
Yeah.
like pharmaceutical drugs and whatever else. It should just probably be pharmaceutical or medical research,
Right.
and that kind of stuff, but, okay. So we'll see it back again. Mr. Roman, do you have a comment?
No, that's fine.
That's good.
We're going to have Ms. Dumichelle look into it?
Yes,
Fine.
yes. Well, she just needed some direct, to know what we were thinking, so that will help her out. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, residential development investigation. All right, discussion of specific points to be investigated in preparation for a November discussion about changing lot area standards in areas currently zoned agricultural. Ms. Dumichelle, did you want to lead this one, or do you want us to just kind of take it and talk about it?
I think you guys should take it, so that way I know what you want to know.
Okay. And Ms. Chick had brought
Yeah, I
this up.
think when it came up the very first time, what we were looking for is what is the impact on changing zoning in our ag areas, like from from 5 acres to 2.5 acres. A lot of the communities around us are at 2.5 acres for the agricultural. And what is the impact of either doing it? What's the impact of leaving at 5? What's the impact on the community? What's the impact on the people that own the property in the area as far as changing the zone, or not the zoning, but the changing it to 2.5 acres or whatever acreage. There was even a 10-acre proposal out there for some of the areas. So in general, what are we looking at, and what happens when that happens?
Okay. Mr. Dignan.
I just want to clarify, when Trustee Chick stated we, you're indicating the township board, correct?
No.
Or are you stating the planning commission?
It came up a while ago. I don't know if you were on the, yeah, I think you were.
Yeah.
It came up
Yeah,
some time
right.
ago.
When we were looking at what the communities around us were doing, and then the discussion was that there was an interest in looking into doing that in our township, and where we would do it, the township, not the board or the planning commission.
Okay, and I remember we talked about it a little
Yeah.
bit, but wasn't there a directive from the township board for us to consider it? I thought there was.
No.
Okay. All right, thank you. I just needed
No.
that clarity.
No. It came up at the time of, I don't know if it was specifically at the time of the original master plan, but we did talk about the surrounding communities and what their ag zoning is, and there's just like 2.5. And there's been discussion about what's legally defensible and what's not legally defensible. And we did develop the open space ordinance that would potentially take care of that, with still protecting, the open space, the agricultural end of things. And that is a help as far as allowing more density in some larger parcels. So we have done some things to kind of alleviate the concern that people can't develop their land, but we have not removed the 5-acre minimum in the ag areas, and that's a pretty significant concern on the part of a lot of people. So if anything like that were to be proposed, we would want to know what the ramifications would be of that. So that's why Ms. Chick brought it up. So,
Yeah, the last time it came up, we actually said we would wait until we had our planner here.
right,
She's here.
to see what kind of, input you could give us. And so I guess I am interested in what the legal implications are of 5-acre zoning. We should know that. But also, is that concern alleviated by the fact that we have an open space ordinance? And then should we apply that open space ordinance to all ag areas, and not just, with the density bonus, not just ones on the on roads that are paved? Mr. Dignan?
Does this bring us back to a question of what we want it to look like instead of density? I mean, obviously density is always going to be a component of the discussion, but in reality, if there's going to be something there, what do we want it to look like? At the same time, what is open space is a question that I've always pondered. What is open space? Is open space 5 acres of a manicured lawn? Is that open space? I don't feel like it is. there's open space, a 5-acre farm with a horse and a small garden. I think that could be. But it comes back to form-based coding, I think, to some extent, and it's something that obviously we've kicked around from time to time. I just don't want to go through a whole discussion again about density without really putting our thinking caps on and figuring out what is right. I mean, and how we approach it. I don't have the answers to that. I'm just saying that we certainly can have this discussion, but I don't know. And maybe the planner can provide some guidance in what we might do to try to understand that more, and maybe you can bring some knowledge to us that we don't necessarily have at our fingertips. We might have seen it before. I think this board did some form-based coding when they did the overlay zones in the Whitmore Lake District. I wasn't here when you guys did that. But I think it's always beneficial for us to have a better understanding of what form-based code is, be able to communicate to the community what form-based code is, to ensure those that have property that they want to make sure is protected can be protected, and those that are in areas that are slated for development in our master plan, how does that affect those areas? So just my thoughts. Thank you.
Mr. Iaquinto?
That, as an example, could be a perfect question on the survey. Are you in favor of 2.5 acre zoning? If so, or a synopsis of something like that. Because again, it all goes back to what is the community as a whole, the majority of the community as a whole, in favor of. And to me, that's something that we haven't really ever answered or had answered.
Mr. Roman?
A few things. I don't know if that would be a great question on a survey. A lot of people don't realize or see the impact that it could propose. But to Mr. Dignan, in the past, it was before you were on the Planning Commission, but Mr. Lalonde did do a couple. I remember a couple of Planning Commission meetings just dedicated to the open space and showed examples and so forth. So I mean, it's unfortunate you didn't get to see that. But I also want to say, I think reducing it to any extent also does affect the open space and clustering, and so that's a given to me. And also on the last master plan, the map.
I know.
Zoning
Right.
map.
Future land use map.
Yeah. Well, there was a chunk of AR that was changed to low density residential, and it's basically south. It's south of Horseshoe Lake. I think the borders like Noller to, I don't want to be that specific, but
Yeah,
Noller to Territorial to possibly, down the road.
Yeah, we did that on the other side of US 23 also.
Right.
So it's like, well, instead of like playing around with the ag and changing the 5 to 2.5 or whatever, just okay, if you want 2,
So
LDR is 2.
Right. So that was a significant change for that area. And obviously we looked at where we wanted that to occur. So I'm not sure you want that to occur all across the ag sections either. So, but I would look forward to what Ms. Dumichel could provide us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I just, one of the
Ms.
questions.
Chick.
Hello. One of the questions I would have too is, how does it affect property owners in regard to what they can or cannot do with their property, depending on what the zoning is? And I'd also like to know, because SIO is pretty much basically looks like us on the other side of our border there, and they have 2.5 acre zoning. And what impact has that had on those, that property there, or that area? I don't know how far it extends, but it's been that way for a long time, so has anything happened there?
Okay. And I would like to know what are the tax implications for the property owners? So now, okay, if it was a 5-acre minimum now, now you got 2.5-acre minimum or whatever, 2 acres, what's that going to do to the property taxes? And I'm sitting here thinking, well, but eventually it does, you know, eventually it does.
Oh, only
Under
if you split
proposed way,
it.
it can't.
Well, only if you split it, but it,
Wait, if you make a property change today, it has a
Yeah.
dramatic impact on your
Yeah.
taxes. But it cannot affect the current property owner's taxes at all.
I would like to know that from an assessor, though, because when properties turn over, then they start looking at yours and going, well, you could have split it into, you know, 2.5 acres, and then, you know,
I don't think this
No, no,
rolls
no.
into the assessment.
No.
I think it does.
They
So-
I
cannot.
don't think it does.
Proposal A was very clear, 5% or the rate of inflation, whichever's less, no matter what.
Okay, but if your next door neighbor is now 2.5 and they've just sold theirs off and you're sitting there,
Doesn't affect you.
I don't know, I want to know it from an assessor.
I mean-
So somebody who really knows. So I'm sure you could find that out, Mr. Michelle. Any other things you'd like Mr. Michelle to look into concerning that? Nope. Okay. We'll move on to scheduling then. I tend to try to plan ahead because it takes some time to prepare for these meetings, and a week in between is not enough. So I know we have quite a few things kind of pending out there that we've been working on at various rates. But upcoming meetings, we'd sort of like to get your ideas of if you have anything specific that you feel should be on the next several agendas. Mr. Dignan.
One thing I'd really like us to do, and I know it's October, I know it's coming close to the end of the year, but I'd like to bring back our priority list.
Okay.
And the reason I'd like to do that is Ms. Dumichel is new to our board. I'd like to go over it with her and for us to give her reasoning as to why this is our priority list, so she has an understanding of where we are coming from as a board. What has brought that priority? You know, 2 words on a piece of paper don't define in a way that I think would benefit her. Anything we can give to benefit her, I think is going to benefit us in the long term.
Okay.
So I'd really like to bring that priority list back up, and when we do bring it back up, I'd like to try to be more aggressive at addressing our priorities. And if we get stuck on one or one has a lag, that's no reason not to move on to the next.
I agree.
Thank you.
Mhm. Okay. But of course, if we get any applicants, we'd be loving it, you know, so anyway. Okay, Mr. Stanilecho.
I'd like to see the discussion on the changes on the RTM district for the next meeting, perhaps, so we can discuss that. And I would like to, at some point, either the next meeting or the meeting after, you know, the further discussion on our bylaws, so we can work on that also. Mr. Fink sent us out his description, I think, yesterday.
Yeah.
So that'll give us some time in order to, you know, look that over.
Okay. So we'll move to get those on to the next agendas. I tend to keep a list of things that are kind of pending that we've been asked about. And Mr. Fink asked us to take a look at RTM some time ago and the SR2 overlay around the lakes. So I know Ms. Dumichel's been working on that, and so those are kind of all pending also, those being the SR2 overlay, I think, being one of the more important things also. So, you know, I've just normally got these things on the agenda as soon as they were available, and I will continue to do that with your suggestions if people are all right with that. Okay. One thing I did want to mention, though, since this is coming up, November 4th, I did bring up this at the last meeting about the resilient waterfront communities. And if this, it's the same night as our Planning Commission meeting. If there's a lot of interest in this board to go to that meeting, we would have to cancel this meeting to do that. So I'm just let me know if anyone is interested in going to that meeting besides me. They're trying to go.
I'm
Okay.
actually back in town that day. I wasn't going to be here, but I am here now.
Oh, you are?
so.
Okay. Okay. So it looks like none of the rest of you are wanting to go to that. I'm going to drive to Muskegon if we have to have a meeting on November 4th, and I'll go to Muskegon for the November 12th meeting if we don't cancel. Do you all want to continue to hold this meeting on November 4th? I'm not sure what's going to be able to be on the agenda. Ms. Dumichel, maybe you would have a better feel for that. Would you be able to have RTM that day? I know Ms. Dumichel would like to go to that meeting too, but.
Yes, have the RTM together by then will be no problem.
Okay. Anything else though available? Go ahead.
Well, I received an email today from, eventually it came from the Michigan chapter of the Michigan Association of Planning and the DEQ, and it was about that workshop, but it was really just a notice for planners in private practice to know that this was happening. And then later on, there was a recommendation. We also asked that you begin to think about communities that may be ready to undertake a master plan or a master plan update that meet the requirements below and who are willing to integrate sustainability planning into the planning effort. Somewhere in here, they suggested that there may be some funding available. So if you have any interest in knowing more about that, I got this today and it was just kind of a thing like, oh, okay, that's happening. So I didn't look at it too closely, but if you have any interest, I'd be happy to summarize it and pass it along. And,
Okay, please.
Okay, and if it influences your decision on whether or not you would like, because they've strongly recommended, it was for us consultants, they strongly recommended that we attend one of these workshops in order to then proceed with that.
Okay.
I make a motion to cancel our November 4th, 2015 meeting.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion motion by Mr. Iaquinto, support by Ms. Chick. Any more discussion on that? Okay, all in favor of canceling the November 4th meeting, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? No. Okay, thank you. Now I don't have to drive to Muskegon. But I would have.
Well, that'll give Ms. Dumichel more time to get all the information together
Right.
for us.
Maybe we can get a couple things, several things on for the next one then. Okay? All right. Is that enough discussion about that? Does anyone else have any more comments about scheduling? Okay. Call to the public then is our next item. It's call to the public. Does anyone like to speak to us?
I wouldn't pass up the chance. My name's still Craig Warburton, and I still live at 450 West Joy Road. I was very disappointed that you passed that motion without adding to it the specificity that would be required to close that document. And perhaps now that makes some sense to me because you're still talking about messing with the densities in my neighborhood, which I don't think any of you live in, which is an interesting point to think about for a future meeting. I think if you take the path of going after industrial or agricultural zoning and reducing the 5 acres, you're going to get a war again. And it will continue, and that's too bad. But I just wanted also to say to Madam Chairperson that I don't know what makes you come back here every time, but I'm really glad you do. And I appreciate all the effort and work that you have all done here tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, next.
Good evening. Udo Hof, 6431 Biltmore Lake Road. Yeah, I really have to hit in the same niche like my previous speaker here. Thank you that you stand this kind of a confrontational situations here, and this is not very nice to observe. On the other hand, I see the board or some people of the board, a member of the boards, are very very adamant about the manufacturing, and living in this township more than 20 years and seeing how many manufacturing companies are settled here, that is very, very low. And I'm since 46 years in manufacturing engineering and all over the country, that there's a big demand for finding spots, and we have the areas, and the question is, why don't we put in more effort? And I really would like to support you, even if I don't agree a lot of stuff with you, but for the manufacturing effort of our township, and to beat on the 25%, okay, but if you go into a regular shop for car repairs, there's a little office, and most of the shop is production space, and that is a fact in industry. Then to the development, I'm really disappointed that ordinance and master plan, they're getting to just buzzwords, that the infrastructure, the cost of infrastructure, the effect of infrastructure and cost to the people in the township is completely pushed underneath the carpet. It shows really more an undermining of several people of the board to undermine the existing master plan. And number 3 is, I really pledge the free of speech in our country here, and I absolutely protest the 3 minutes offered speech here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Wayne Docket, 9097 Main Street, Whitmore Lake. Janet Chick brought me out of my pajamas tonight. Both boards screwed up big time on the survey. Let's all admit it. I mean, everybody, you argued for an hour about it. We screwed up. I asked Howard about the board, about it higher than this Cobalt. Howard said the board had nothing to do with this. The planning commission hired it. So maybe you guys are a little more responsible than we are, but we were stupid enough to pay $8,000 for nothing and still owe $8,000 or more, and we got nothing. So I voted no on it, I'll have you know. I was one board member that didn't want it when I asked at the meeting. So when they did do it, they wanted $11,000. We got a bid for $11,000. But the board, the township board said, oh no, we need something better than that. We want to pay $18,000, so, or 17, whatever it was. So that's why we paid more. But we did have a deal from them for 11. So when Janet Chick said that all the township trustees were responsible, I want to come down and say I was not. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else like to speak tonight? No? Okay. Moving on to comments from the commissioners. We'll start with Mr. Dignan tonight.
The only comment I have is, I think it was important for us to do what we did tonight. I appreciate the board addressing the Biltmore issue that's been lingering out here, confirming that going forward they need to comply with what we have in our ordinances and our master plan. It shall be interesting to see how the community responds to that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Chick?
I have nothing tonight, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Stanilecho?
I just want everybody to remember our men and women in uniform. They're the ones keeping us safe and allowing us to have this freedom of expression that we have on these meetings. Thank you.
Support local businesses. Thank you very much.
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Thank you.
No, nothing, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, thank you all for participating tonight, and for members of the public coming out. I appreciate that. We will see you on November 18th now for our next meeting. And I guess we can move to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, motion by Dignan,
I'll
support
support.
by Roman. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Thank you.